The marble halls of the Supreme Court gleamed under the Grand Dome, a symbol of America's highest legal authority. Though silence filled the chamber, the atmosphere was tense. Something had shifted. Behind closed doors, whispers carried more weight than gavels. At the far end of the room stood Pam Bondi, composed yet unwavering. The former Florida Attorney General had not come by chance. She had been summoned by a discreet but concerned coalition of senior legal figures. They were uneasy about the court's trajectory. But Bondi didn't just bring concerns, she brought proof. Across from her, in the shadow of the high bench, Chief Justice John Roberts adjusted his robe. Private meetings of this nature were rare for him, but today was different. He was the subject. Bondi's voice was calm, deliberate. This isn't about politics. This is about integrity. She placed a thick manila folder on the oak table. Inside were documents, printouts, screenshots, transcripts. A quiet but heavy thud filled the chamber. The American Inns of Court, she stated, her voice carrying across the room. An exclusive, invitation-only legal society. It claims to promote professionalism, but beneath the surface, it operates as a tightly woven network of progressive legal influencers, federal judges, prosecutors, even Supreme Court justices. Roberts remained still. Bondi continued. Your name isn't just on their membership list, Chief Justice. You hold honorary status within their British counterpart, the Middle Temple, an institution with direct funding ties to George Soros. A murmur rippled through the room. One justice raised an eyebrow, another leaned forward. George Soros, someone muttered. Pam nodded. It gets worse. Judges James Boasberg, Beryl Howell, Amit Mehta, and Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson, all members. And their rulings? Repeatedly obstructing former President Trump's executive orders on immigration, national security, election oversight. Roberts finally spoke, his tone controlled but firm. Membership does not imply conspiracy, Miss Bondi. These are respected legal professionals. Bondi's gaze never wavered. And yet, when Boasberg blocked Trump's deportation order, you, Chief Justice of the United States, publicly defended him. Roberts straightened. It is my duty to defend judicial independence. No, Bondi countered. Your duty is to defend impartiality. But when judges convene in secret, share platforms with political spouses like Doug Emhoff, Kamala Harris's husband, and celebrate each other for jailing January 6 protesters, that isn't independence. That's collusion. Silence hung heavy in the room. Roberts looked down at his notes. Chief Justice John Roberts looked back at her, his expression unreadable. These are serious accusations. Do you have proof? Pam Bondi didn't hesitate. She opened the folder. Here's the guest list from an Inns of Court event last fall, Roberts, Boasberg, Emhoff. And here, she slid another paper forward, is the award citation given to Judge Howell, just days after her ruling that extended pretrial detention for January 6 defendants. One justice picked up the documents, squinting. Another quietly snapped photos with a phone. This isn't just bad optics, Pam continued. This is systemic bias. And worse, it's coordinated. She leaned forward. If this were any other branch of government, we'd call it a shadow cabal. The room was silent. Then Justice Alito spoke. Let her continue. Pam turned the page. The Middle Temple in the UK lists Roberts as an honorary bencher. That's not just a title. The group has received grants from Soros-funded NGOs. That's not a theory, it's documented. And their US affiliate is funneling ideology into American jurisprudence. Justice Thomas cleared his throat. What's your end goal, Miss Bondi? Pam's answer was immediate. Accountability. We don't allow military officers to hold secret meetings with foreign-funded organizations. Why should we tolerate it in the judiciary? She met their eyes. I'm asking this court to open an independent ethics review on Roberts, on the network, on the influence. Roberts didn't respond. But the storm had begun. The news didn't just ripple, it detonated. Cable networks dropped their usual chatter for a single breaking headline, Chief Justice John Roberts linked to secretive legal group with Soros ties. Across America, talking heads speculated. The headline screamed. Shadow judiciary. Legal cabal undermining democracy. Roberts under fire. But behind the scenes, Pam Bondi wasn't interested in media theatrics. She was building a case, meticulous, factual, surgical. In her downtown DC office, now buzzing with staff and security, Bondi stood at the center of the storm. The documents on her desk weren't just news clippings. They were evidence, dossiers, connection charts, financial records. When pieced together, they didn't just suggest something sinister. They screamed it. She turned to her deputy, Caleb Moran, a former federal investigator with a mind like a filing cabinet. "Run it back for me," she said, eyes locked on a thick binder, plain and cold. Caleb nodded. "Roberts is a documented honorary member of the Middle Temple in the UK. That group gets major funding from Soros-backed foundations." Pam cut in. "And the US connection?" "The American Inns of Court," Caleb said. "Roberts is a member. So are Judges Boasberg, Howell, and Mehta, all key players in the DC circuit. All," he tapped the binder, with a common thread. "The reckoning." Pam Bondi crossed her arms, scanning the latest reports. "Recent rulings that blocked or stalled President Trump's immigration policies," Caleb muttered, eyes flicking over the data. "Convenient," Pam said. He nodded. "And Doug Emhoff, Kamala Harris's husband, has attended the same private events, fundraisers, legal symposiums. Some of them hosted by Middle Temple's affiliate branches." Pam leaned back in her chair. "They are not even trying to hide it." "Nope," Caleb replied. "They are just hoping nobody connects the dots." Pam gave a faint smile. Too late. The press conference. 2 days later, she stood before a packed press room. The podium lights were harsh, but necessary. Today mattered. "I am raising serious questions about the integrity of one of our nation's highest officers," she began, her voice firm, her expression unflinching. She held up a folder. "This is not a conspiracy," she said, pausing for effect. "These are facts." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Flashbulbs popped. Chief Justice John Roberts is affiliated with an organization financially supported by foreign interests, including those tied to George Soros. The room gasped. She paced the stage. "Judicial impartiality is not a luxury. It is the bedrock of democracy." A reporter raised a hand. "Are you calling for Chief Justice Roberts to recuse himself?" Pam's gaze sharpened. "I'm calling for his resignation." Dead silence. "This is no longer about opinion," she continued. "This is about national security, judicial ethics, and foreign influence on American law." The press room erupted. Across the country, news anchors scrambled for talking points. Liberals screamed, "Witch hunt." Conservatives shouted, "Finally." Pam didn't care about either side's applause. She cared about cleaning house. The fallout. Inside the Supreme Court, John Roberts sat alone. His clerks had gone silent. His office doors stayed shut longer than usual. On his desk lay the article that had ignited it all. Gateway Pundit, blasted as fringe, had struck a nerve. Their reporting had gained traction. He picked up his phone. "Ketanji," he said when Justice Jackson answered. Before he could continue, she cut him off. "I'm aware." A pause. "Then, you should step down." Roberts gripped the phone tighter. "I've done nothing wrong." "It doesn't matter," Jackson said. "This isn't about law anymore, it's about perception. If Pam keeps pressing, she doesn't scare me. She should." That night, Pam appeared on national television. "We are witnessing the erosion of the separation between impartial justice and political activism," she said. "The highest court in our land cannot be led by a man whose alliances compromise that balance." Fox News called it historic. CNN called it dangerous. Twitter melted. Pam didn't flinch. The next move. In a wood-paneled conference room at DOJ headquarters, Pam sat surrounded by constitutional law experts, federal investigators, and former ethics committee members. They had all reviewed the evidence. They all saw the same problem. You can't impeach a sitting Supreme Court justice without House and Senate majorities, one expert warned. Pam shook her head. "We are not talking about impeachment." She leaned forward. "We are talking about leverage." A murmur ran through the room. If the people see this as corruption, and they do, pressure builds, she continued. Roberts won't survive this in the court of public opinion. A younger staffer hesitated. What if he doubles down? Pam's voice dropped. Then we keep going. We expose everything. She tapped the table. The parties. The donors. The rulings. The favors. We don't blink. Silence. Then a nod. What's the endgame? Someone asked. Pam's gaze sharpened. We take back the bench. The counterattack. At the Supreme Court, Roberts sat at his desk. The TV played in the background. Pam Bondi's face filled the screen. The appearance of impropriety is just as damaging as the act itself. Americans deserve better. And I intend to make sure they get it. He turned off the screen. On the wall, his black robe hung motionless. For the first time in years, it felt heavy. Then, a quiet press statement from the Supreme Court. Chief Justice John Roberts maintains the highest standards of judicial ethics and impartiality. Any affiliation with legal organizations is in accordance with established norms and is unrelated to the court's decision-making. Pam read the statement. She looked up. It's a deflection, she said. And it's weak. The smoking gun. She stood in the center of what her staff had begun calling the war room, a converted DOJ briefing chamber. The walls were papered with court filings, flowcharts, and timelines. Red strings connected names and institutions. Few photos. Dozens of names. A new face had joined them, Mara Jensen, a veteran DOJ ethics prosecutor with a sharp jawline and a sharper pen. She dropped a file onto the table. We dug deeper, she said. You're not going to like it. Pam opened the folder. $4.2 million. That was how much Soros-backed Open Society foundations had funneled into the Middle Temple over 10 years. A third of that. Earmarked for transatlantic legal exchanges. So they are grooming judges, Pam muttered. Or at the very least, Mara said, they are influencing them. Pam flipped through the documents. The Inns of Court Awards. The legal symposiums in London. The speaker honorariums. It's not a smoking gun. Mara interrupted. It's a burning briefcase. Pam's jaw tightened. And Roberts sits on a bench that rules on immigration, foreign influence, national security. Caleb, her deputy, spoke up. They've built a pipeline, radical legal theory dressed up in academic robes, passed to federal judges under the guise of professional enrichment. Pam grabbed a red marker and strode to the whiteboard. We need to prove influence, not just association. She drew a line connecting names, events, and rulings. If we can show a pattern where these connections align with judicial decisions, she tapped the board. The case builds itself. Caleb flipped open his laptop. Done. Already pulled case data for Roberts and the DC Circuit judges. Correlation is strong. Especially with Boasberg. Pam stared at the data. Then, she smiled. It was time to finish this. Mara Jensen flipped through her notes. And don't forget, she added, Roberts publicly defended Boasberg just 2 days after his ruling blocked Trump's immigration order. That ruling was the trigger for this firestorm. Pam Bondi turned sharply. Then that's where we strike. Judge James Boasberg was supposed to be a quiet functionary. Not anymore. Within 48 hours of Bondi's announcement, Boasberg's record was under a microscope. Legal pundits dissected every speech he'd given, every panel he joined, every trip taken on Legal Foundation dollars. One trip stood out, London, 2021, a panel on post-national jurisprudence in a globalizing world, sponsored by Middle Temple. Attendees: Boasberg, Imhoff, and 2 EU legal scholars known for championing open borders. The photos were grainy. The conversations weren't recorded. But it was enough. On Capitol Hill, the pressure mounted. Senator Josh Hawley opened a formal ethics inquiry. Senator Ted Cruz drafted a resolution barring judges who accepted foreign legal gifts from ruling on federal immigration law. Even centrist Democrats started blinking. On Morning Joe, the normally reserved Joe Scarborough said it plainly. If we flipped the script and Clarence Thomas had ties to a legal group funded by Koch or Bannon, the left would be calling for blood. Inside the Supreme Court, tension crackled. Justice Alito stopped attending informal lunches. Justice Gorsuch issued a vague statement defending judicial independence, which everyone read as a subtweet aimed at Roberts. Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson was reportedly furious behind closed doors. And Roberts? Silent. But silence had begun to sound like guilt. The Senate strike. Pam knew timing was everything. The moment for the next strike had arrived. She requested a closed-door hearing before the Senate Judiciary Subcommittee on Judicial Ethics. The chamber was small. But the cameras were rolling. "I have no vendetta," Pam began, voice even. "But I have a duty." She presented emails, meeting minutes, event guest lists. The award given to Judge Beryl Howell just days after she oversaw aggressive January 6 prosecutions. Middle Temple's financial disclosures. Then she delivered the hammer blow. These are not random coincidences. This is the architecture of quiet influence and ideological pipeline shaping American jurisprudence from the top down. Senator Mike Lee leaned forward. "Do you believe Chief Justice Roberts knowingly accepted foreign influence?" Pam didn't hesitate. "I believe he knowingly accepted affiliation with those who promote it." A beat of silence. "Would you call that corruption?" Pam met his gaze. "If a foreign group gives you a medal, pays for your conferences, and places their allies in your chambers, what else do you call it?" The room buzzed. The next morning, Politico leaked a memo, allegedly from Roberts' own clerk, expressing grave concerns over his refusal to cut ties with foreign-linked legal networks. Pam didn't leak it. But she didn't deny it, either. On Fox News, Hannity grilled senators. On Twitter, #ResignRoberts trended. Panic mode. At the DOJ, Pam stood by her office window, staring at the Capitol below. Mara walked in. "They are panicking," she said. "Judges are calling for internal reviews. A whistleblower from Middle Temple is ready to talk." Pam nodded. "Let them scramble. We are not finished." The Supreme Court, once a symbol of unwavering justice, had become ground zero for a silent civil war. On one side, Pam Bondi. On the other, Roberts. Silent. Elusive. But still wielding enormous institutional power. Pam's strategy shifted. This wasn't about outrage anymore. It was about evidence. Her investigative team, retired federal agents, legal scholars, cyber analysts, compiled over 200 pages of internal communications, association records, interagency meeting logs, all pointing to one damning conclusion. Roberts wasn't just compromised. He was architecting a deeper alignment of progressive influence within the judiciary. Rachel Cortez, a blunt ex-prosecutor, sat across from Pam in a secure DOJ basement office. "The Middle Temple link is our nuke," Rachel said. "No American Chief Justice should hold honorary status in a foreign legal entity, especially one funded by Soros-backed initiatives." Pam leaned forward. "Then we detonate." The breaking point. The next morning, a 14-page legal brief titled "Judicial Integrity Under Foreign Influence and National Security Concern" landed on the desks of every major Senate Judiciary Committee member. It was bold, explicit, meticulously documented. By midday, #Roberts compromised was trending. The response was immediate. Senator Elaine Whitmore, Democrat Massachusetts, a Roberts ally, called it a smear campaign and demanded Pam's resignation. Liberal media outlets blasted it as political manipulation of the courts. Pam's response: "We are not attacking the courts. We are protecting them. If transparency threatens you, maybe you shouldn't be wielding judicial power." The counterstrike. Within days, a federal circuit judge loyal to Roberts issued a restraining order against the DOJ, blocking them from releasing internal judicial correspondence, citing national security risks. Pam folded her arms. "They are panicking," Rachel said. "We've hit something raw." That night, a sealed package arrived at Pam's private residence. Inside, a flash drive, wrapped in legal stationery. Anonymous sender. Pam inserted it into her laptop. 90 minutes of audio. A private Inns of Court retreat. 2 years prior. She hit play. John Roberts' voice. Calm. Measured. But the words sent a chill down her spine. The constitutional rigidity of American law must eventually give way to international judicial consensus. The modern judge must not serve the people but the system. Pam's blood ran cold. The Chief Justice of the United States had just declared allegiance to a transnational judicial ideology, one that undermined American sovereignty. The final blow. Days later, a new leak. Not from Pam. Not from her team. But from a whistleblower inside the Federal Judicial Center. Over 300 federal judges had attended Inns of Court events in the past decade, including a dozen who had ruled on border security, religious liberty, national defense. A pattern emerged. Judges affiliated with Inns of Court disproportionately ruled against Trump-era policies, often citing strikingly similar legal arguments. Pam's phone buzzed. A secure call. The president. Can you bring Roberts down? Pam closed her eyes. Then opened them. With fire. If I get what I need. Yes. On Capitol Hill, a storm brewed. Senator Marcus Green, a Republican heavyweight, called for a special oversight subcommittee into judicial influence operations. Public hearings were scheduled. Pam Bondi was the star witness. Meanwhile, media warfare erupted. The left called her a power-hungry autocrat staging a judicial coup. The right called her a patriot taking on the most powerful unelected figure in government. Outside the Supreme Court, protests swelled. Some held signs that read, "Judges serve America. Not the globalists." Pam stood at the epicenter of it all. And she wasn't backing down. The Supreme Court building, once a symbol of unshakable justice, had become the epicenter of an unprecedented constitutional crisis. At the heart of the storm was Chief Justice John Roberts, a figure long respected for his judicial acumen, now entangled in allegations of foreign influence and ideological subversion. It began with a whisper, a murmur in the halls of power. Legal scholars, retired federal agents, and cyber analysts had spent months compiling evidence, a meticulous web of internal communications, financial records, and international affiliations that painted a damning picture. At the center of it all stood Roberts, not merely a participant but an architect of a deeper alignment between the American judiciary and progressive transnational forces. Pam Bondi, the relentless Attorney General, had set the pieces in motion. A former prosecutor with a keen sense for timing, she knew exactly when to strike. As public scrutiny mounted, she walked into a closed-door hearing before the Senate Judiciary Subcommittee on Judicial Ethics. The room was small, but the cameras were rolling. "I have no vendetta," she began, her voice unwavering. "But I have a duty." She presented emails, meeting minutes, and guest lists. She displayed awards granted to judges by foreign legal entities, including one given to Judge Beryl Howell just days after her aggressive handling of January 6 prosecutions. Then she laid out the most damning piece of all, a connection between the Middle Temple, an elite British legal society, and key U.S. judges, including Roberts. "These are not coincidences," she declared. "This is the architecture of influence, a quiet but deliberate effort to shape American jurisprudence from the top down." The revelation sent shockwaves through Washington. Within hours, conservative senators called for ethics inquiries. Progressive media outlets dismissed the claims as a political witch hunt. Roberts himself remained silent, but his silence was beginning to sound like guilt. Then came the leak. A cache of private emails, spanning from 2015 to 2022, was released to an international watchdog site. The content was explosive. Roberts had not only corresponded with members of the European Court of Human Rights, but he had also advocated for judicial convergence, the blending of American law with international legal norms. Even more damning, he had suggested that U.S. judicial appointments be vetted for transnational compatibility. Pam Bondi's phone buzzed. It was Rachel Cortez, her top investigator. "This is it." At precisely 9 a.m. the next morning, the Department of Justice issued a formal statement. Statement from Attorney General Pam Bondi regarding judicial integrity and national sovereignty. The message was brief, but it landed like an earthquake. A DOJ-led investigation was now underway into what it described as long-term patterns of ideological interference within the federal judiciary. And at the center of it all, Chief Justice John Roberts. News agencies scrambled. Live broadcasts interrupted scheduled programming. Within an hour, #Roberts Compromised was trending worldwide. By midday, the Senate Oversight Subcommittee convened its first hearing. Pam Bondi, sworn in under oath, delivered a statement for the history books. This is not about politics. This is about the principle of judicial neutrality. No American judge, no matter how high, should serve two masters. Especially when one is foreign. The evidence was irrefutable. Audio recordings surfaced of Roberts advocating for a judiciary that must eventually yield to international judicial consensus. Metadata from leaked documents showed unauthorized edits and deletions, attempts to obscure links between Roberts's office and foreign legal advisory groups. Washington descended into chaos. Public protests erupted outside the Supreme Court. Some demanded Roberts's resignation, others called the investigation a political coup. Even international leaders weighed in. British legal scholars condemned the DOJ's overreach, while European officials quietly distanced themselves from the controversy. Then, a final blow. A red folder was slipped under Roberts's office door. Inside were 10 sworn affidavits from former clerks, federal judges, and a retired Supreme Court justice. Each confirmed the same thing: Roberts had actively advanced internationalist legal doctrines, contrary to his oath to uphold the U.S. Constitution. An emergency statement was scheduled. Cameras rolled. The nation held its breath. Roberts appeared behind the bench, his face worn but resolute. "I have served this court and this country with integrity," he said. "I reject these accusations as politically motivated and deeply harmful to the rule of law. I will not resign. I will not retreat." But the moment he left the podium, another alert flashed across screens. Breaking: Supreme Court Chief Justice John Roberts resigns. The statement followed minutes later. "The integrity of the court is paramount. While I maintain that my actions were always in the pursuit of global justice standards, I recognize that my presence now endangers the institution I swore to protect." He was gone. In the aftermath, Congress passed Resolution 1437, reaffirming judicial sovereignty and implementing sweeping reforms. Federal oversight of international judicial affiliations was established. The American chapter of the Middle Temple was suspended pending investigation. Pam Bondi stood before the nation one final time. "This was never about one man," she said. "This was about a mandate. We are a sovereign nation. Our laws are not for sale to foreign interests, to secret societies, or to those who forget who they serve." She refused all offers for higher office. She returned to private life. But history had already decided her legacy. She wasn't just the woman who exposed a scandal. She was the one who proved that even the most powerful could be held accountable.